Republican presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy is blasting the liberal media's portrayal of Republican voters after an Iowa newspaper featured him in a racially charged political cartoon. The cartoon in Wednesday's Quad City Times depicts Ramaswamy at a campaign rally with, quote, Maga friends. Members of the crowd, they are shown yelling racial insults at Ramaswamy. Ramaswamy is fiercely condemning the cartoon, tweeting this: "It's sad that this is how the mainstream media views Republicans. I've met with grassroots conservatives across America and never once experienced the kind of bigotry that I regularly see from the left. Iowa's Quad City absolutely has the right to print this, but it's still shameful." Emily, totally shameful. In the media, they always go after not the candidate, but the voters. Half the country, good, hardworking people who are not racist, as they suggest.
It's the dripping disdain from the far left, the elite condescension from the Democrat Party that we will never escape. I'm reminded of the interview he had with then employed Don Lemon, who said, remember, they were talking about race relations in America. They were talking about Black Lives Matter. And Don Lemon said, you know, whatever race you are. That flippant disdain that Vivek then said, hold on. I'm Indian American, and I'm paraphrasing, and these are my thoughts. They see everyone as a block. And to all of us who view people as individuals, as Americans first, it's deeply offensive that all of this damning racism comes from the left. And I'm reminded of those Seattle cops that I told you guys about during the riots, who were very diverse in race, in ethnicity, and also in sexual preference, and said that the worst bigotry and the worst racism they have ever experienced was on the streets of Seattle when the progressive mob was hurling insults at them. Unrepeatable on air.
So doesn't this have the air a little bit of the white savior thing, right? In other words, this cartoonist has decided that Vivek, who is a multimillionaire tech giant, right? He's a very successful guy. He needs this cartoonist to protect him from the evil MAGA people, right? And, you know, to Emily's point, you reminded me of something. During the riots of post-Floyd here in New York City, I was out there. I saw a black sergeant standing at one of the stanchions while the crowds were throwing stuff and yelling and screaming. They surrounded him, and it was mostly white kids, Antifa types, screaming at him, calling him an Uncle Tom and everything else. And his guys came over to protect him. Because he was a sergeant, he had a crew. They came over. They were white. And it was just an interesting dichotomy because the worst grief he was taking, exactly as you're saying it. Look, what the Dems have to recognize, aside from the fact that we should be colorblind by...
are not okay with white people, according to this poll, not according to me, according to this poll. That's a hate group. That's a hate group. And I don't want to have anything to do with them. And I would say, you know, based on the current way things are going, the best advice I would give to white people is to get the hell away from black people. Just get the f*** away. Wherever you have to go, just get away.
I wonder how this cartoon came about, which was supposed to be funny, but it wasn't at all. You know, Harris, does an editor approve this? I mean, it had to go through multiple layers.
Well, I don't know much that ends up with this much high-profile feature that doesn't get seen by an editor. I mean, I wasn't there, but I would have to assume somebody saw it. But then you have to ask, well, what is tolerable and what isn't? So somewhere in that, you know, area where this guy was creating this, he felt like it was okay to do this. I will say this, Vivek Ramaswamy is the American dream.
Yes.
Yes.
And, you know, I've met his family, and I don't know. And while we're at it, you know, Donald Trump was probably one of the best examples of this, too. I mean, you talk about pushing against the rich and elite, also very wealthy, right? Yeah. But finds a way to connect with everybody. Vivek Ramaswamy, he loves the guys in the MAGA hats. He was the person who first said if he were made president and former President Trump needed his help, he'd pardon him. That's who got that party started. So I don't get the cartoonist at all. Doesn't he know that these men support one another too, intra-party? You know about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And Amy, I will say, of all the candidates, Vivek is beloved in the Republican Party. I would say he's in the top 3 names I see regularly on social media. People love him.
Ramaswamy, it's a great name. It's memorable. And I think taking this experience and bringing to light who the people are is exactly the conversation that we're having right now is the good that comes out of something that was meant to be bad, is reminding everybody the faces, the people, the places that they've come from, and that's what is the good that comes from this.
I really criticize the vice president for not specifically calling out Antifa and other left-wing extremist groups. But are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups and to say that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland?
Sure,
are you
I'm
prepared
willing
to
do
specifically
that,
do it? Well, go ahead, sir.
I would say almost everything I see is from the left wing, not from the right wing.
So what are you saying?
I'm willing to do anything. I want to see peace.
Then do it, sir.
Say it. Do it. Say it. Do you want to call him? What do you want to call them? Give me a name. Give me a
white
name.
Supremacists and
Who would
white
you like me to condemn?
White supremacists and right
Proud
militia.
Boys, stand back and stand by. But I'll tell you what. Somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left, because this is not a right-wing problem.
Joe Biden's 5 million illegal aliens are on the verge of replacing you, replacing your jobs, and replacing your kids in school. And coming from all over the world, they're also replacing your culture. And that's not great for America.
Replacing you, replacing your culture. To be clear, Marjorie Taylor Greene there is espousing a neo-Nazi conspiracy theory known as the Great Replacement.
The Democratic Party, they have a majority. They could stop this crime today. Some people say, well, they're soft on crime. No, they're not soft on crime. They're pro-crime. They want crime. They want crime because they want to take over what you got. They want to control what you have. They want reparation because they think the people that do the crime are owed that. They are not owed that.
David Duke, the former leader of the Ku Klux Klan, made that clear one day after the Republican convention. He filed to run for a U.S. Senate seat in Louisiana. He says Donald Trump's slogan, America First, is a slogan Duke has used himself.
Well, yeah, I used it in 1992 when I ran for president, America First. And it's simply the idea of putting American interests first for American people.
Duke says Trump's attacks on Muslims and illegal immigration have brought Duke's own beliefs into the mainstream. He says he's advocating for European Americans, as he puts it, while running for Senate.
There's a lot of political correctness in this country, and people don't want to talk about their political views. In fact, that's why we have, in this country, a secret ballot.
I want to ask about a little bit of news of this week. I'm sure you're closely following it. Trump has been criticized a great deal this week, and a number of reasonably prominent Republicans have said they're actually going to vote for Hillary Clinton. Richard Hanna, congressman from upstate New York, Maria Comella, longtime Republican strategist for Chris Christie. What are you thinking about Donald Trump after these last few days?
As a United States Senator, nobody will be more supportive of his legislative agenda, his Supreme Court agenda, than I will. I'm 100% behind it. I have a long record of being in favor of protecting our borders from this massive immigration. So I think that those Republicans are those so-called conservatives. They are betraying the principles of the Republican Party and certainly conservatism.
But Maria Comella, this Chris Christie aide, former aide, who said that she's going to vote for Clinton, said that she just couldn't remain silent anymore for political reasons when faced with bigotry, racism, or inflammatory rhetoric.
You know, these are just nothing more than epithets and vicious attacks. Donald Trump is not a racist. And the truth is, in this country, if you simply defend the heritage of the European American people, then you're automatically a racist. There's massive racist racial discrimination against European Americans, and that's the reality.
You know that white people in this country still have the overwhelming preponderance of wealth and power, right?
Well, they don't really have the overwhelming, not European American history. No, they don't. I mean, Hollywood is not controlled by traditional European American heritage.
Are you referring to Jews when you?
Well, they're from the Middle East. That's not European. That's not European, is it? That's Middle Eastern. And they have a particular orientation for their positions and their programs.
David Duke went on for a while in our conversation, unspooling old racist theories that he said were not racist. He said Europeans built America, even though his own state was built in large part by the descendants of Africans. He wrote Jews out of Europe's history, as we heard. He said Jews control the content of movies and even pay for Hillary Clinton's campaign. Some critics see echoes of discredited tales like these in some gestures by Donald Trump. On Twitter, Trump posted an image of Hillary Clinton, piles of cash, and an apparent Star of David. He later said it was just a star. Trump once said on TV he would have to research before denouncing the KKK.
We've already polled inside the Trump voters, and we know that we're going to carry 75 to 80% of those who are going to vote for Trump.
You think Trump voters are your voters?
Well, of course they are, because I represent the ideas of preserving this country and the heritage of this country, and I think Trump represents that as well.
David Duke, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Former Klansman David Duke, who's running for a U.S. Senate seat in Louisiana.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Mr. President, do you want the support of these white nationalist groups who say they support you, Mr. President?
Mr. President,
have you denounced them strongly enough?
A car planning a group of people, would you call that terrorism, sir?